And most companies, and it doesn't matter what industry, but most companies stop after they convert the client, and they forget that you have to create some sort of level of excitement. You have to send them to other offers, or at least, upsells, cross sells, down sells. I'm sure, like, as you're going through the process, it's like, okay, do you want to splurge on this, really expensive countertop, or do we want to talk about, the other countertop that we originally quoted? Where a lot of trust is lost is when you act so many different ways and so many different places. And so they feel like, okay, do I actually know this business? Do I actually trust them? That type of thing. It's the same with humans. Yep. If you act a certain way at church, the way you do in business, the way you do in your marriage or with your kids, or, whatever different areas. And if you act like different people, you're going to lose that trust and that relational equity. Yeah. And so by being the same in every single area, you're going to build a lot of that equity with them.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Your Project Shepherd podcast. Today, we're going to talk about why most construction companies struggle with both their marketing and their general communication and how to fix it. And to do that with me today, I have my guest, my friend Lauren Jefferson. Lauren is with FocusCopy, and they are a copywriting and content writing firm based here in Houston. And if you're interested in working with them, I know they work all over the country. So if you're not a Houston local, that's okay. You can still reach out to her. Right, Lauren?
Yep.
So first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad you're joining us. You actually helped us here on the podcast a couple of years ago when we first got started. Way back in season 1, we did this story to kind of illustrate, kind of the purpose of the podcast, and we kind of wrote this story, and I reached out to you to kind of help us fine-tune that story and that messaging and kind of get all that planned out. And that was a huge help to us getting started. And
it's amazing how since then, how it's transformed into something that it is today, and how it's even changed the audience and that type of thing. So it was really exciting to be part of that.
Yeah. We've changed and morphed and come a long way since then. So it's been fun, but I always go back to that first year story. And I think about those original principles that we talked about, and those are still kind of the principles that we still try to follow and talk about today and kind of craft our message around. So yeah, that was a great help to do that. And one day, when I eventually have free time, I want to get you to help me kind of turn all that into a book.
Yeah,
so
we'll be here.
I just gotta find the time in my schedule to do that. So, so I'm going to let you tell everybody about what it is that you guys do exactly. But first, there was this one line on your website that I really liked. And I'll read it. And it says, "The FocusCopy team caffeinates clients' brand messaging to energize their business's target audience to take action and become paying customers." Yeah. So what does that mean, and how do you do that?
That means, everything starts with your words, right? If you don't have the right words behind your marketing, behind your sales, it doesn't matter what action you're going to do to deploy it. Like, great design, ads, all that stuff, great, but you need the right words. And so oftentimes what you need to do is take a step back, drink a cup of coffee, get those creative juices going, and actually develop a message that resonates with you and connects with you, but then also connects with the target audience, whoever that is. And so with the full intent for people to make a buying decision, whether that's to subscribe to an email list or actually pay you or send to other offers or that type of thing.
So what does FocusCopy do? What services do you guys offer?
Yeah, so we are copy strategy and copywriting, but then everything that we do on the back end is system oriented. So we don't want you to just buy a blog or like do monthly blogs or monthly newsletters or whatever and just do that one thing and leave it. We want to put some energy behind it. And so what we do is show you, okay, you've done this monthly blog, this monthly newsletter. Let's go ahead and put some sort of strategy behind it to where you're going to repurpose that into 16 different assets. And so all of a sudden you spread that out across the year. Your audience hears a similar message, and we all know that you have to hear a message. It can be the same one multiple times before making a buying decision. So we're actually able to turn these smaller assets into a much bigger program for your marketing and sales.
Awesome. I'm a believer. I love repurposing content. In fact, that's one of the things that Francis, my producer, sitting over here behind the console. That's one of the things that he is awesome at is taking our podcast content and let's repurpose that. Let's like how can we leverage what we've already spent the time and money to create, and how can we use that to push it to different places. How can we kind of get more bang for our buck when we've already spent that money, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can take a podcast, which is a longer form piece of content, turn it into a whole email series, turn it into a whole social media, into blogs, emails, put it into your customer journey, which is what we were just talking about before we started recording. But you can add all of that content that you've already created and spread it out to where you don't have to think about what are you going to say. You've already thought of it.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you have to hear something multiple times before it sticks. And I'm going to go off on a tangent for a second. And you are too young for this, but way back in the 20th century, the 1980s, and Francis is laughing too because he's a youngster as well. There was a Head and Shoulders shampoo commercial. And there were these two ladies that were shopping at a department store for buying some clothing for a job interview. And the one lady's like, your outfit looks great, but what about that dandruff on your shoulder? And, Head and Shoulders is a dandruff shampoo. And they're like, the tagline was, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. She's like brushing the dandruff off her friend's shoulder and like, hey, you need to shampoo your hair. It was some dandruff shampoo. But that tagline, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. That's kind of where I was going with this was in your marketing, right? Like, I think people think about, there's so many different parts of your marketing, but that first impression that you make on people, your very initial messaging is so important because that sets the stage for how all your future interactions hopefully will be with that potential customer, right? So how do we craft our messaging so that it's from the very beginning where we are starting with, this is us and this is what your journey is going to be.
Yeah. I think it starts back from analyzing who are you as a business leader, as an entrepreneur, as a business? Who do you want to be? What type of environment do you want to create? And then looking at what type of clients do you actually want to work? Obviously, we want to work with buying clients and paying clients that are full of cash and all of those good things, but looking at the types of personalities. So we have a lot of coffee references in our brand, and that's because we want to work with clients that we actually enjoy and would actually like to sit down and have a cup of coffee with. We want to have conversations. We want to feel invested with their company. We want to feel like friends with them. And so when we look at that, that makes it so much easier for us to create a message to where it's like, okay, I feel like when I meet with Lauren or meet with FocusCopy that I'm holding a hot cup of coffee and I can kind of settle down. I feel excited. I'm, feeling creative and all of that. And so as a builder, or as a contractor, as, whatever type of profession you are, you need to look at what type of people do you want to work with? Who are you as an individual? And trying to find those points that can marry together and create a really cool brand and brand message.
And of course, all of our interactions also should be to spur people to take action.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
I mean, obviously, like you want to have just some general awareness of who you are, what your brand is, but ultimately, we don't want people just to know who we are. We want people to actually buy or join that journey with us and take action. And
that's where you get into figuring out what the pain points are of the target audience, or what are they struggling with? What are their challenges? And so, we were talking about your buying journey. And so home building and custom home building is a big process, right? And there's a lot of questions. And so one way that you can mitigate that is, answering a lot of those frequently asked questions, showing, okay, this path is actually way easier than you think it is, even if it's complicated, but you've made it simple for their sake. And then you handle all the complicated side on the back end.
Yeah. I think it's really important for the messaging. I think people use the term branding, but the messaging, like what we're communicating to the clients about who we are, how we operate. I think it's really important for that messaging to be cohesive all the time. We don't want them to kind of hear or perceive one thing in this initial marketing, in this first interaction, and they get a different feeling next time, right? Like people need to feel like we're going to be consistent, like they're going to be a part of a defined process and they're going to be taken care of through that process, right?
Yeah. And I'm sure you've bought into, whether it's software or something, and, you have all their marketing, and then you get in and their onboarding is totally different.
Mm-hmm.
And so we recently onboarded software. I'm like, y'all have marketing issues internally because the message has completely changed as soon as I became a paying customer. And so that can create a little bit of buyer's remorse or buyer hesitancy after the fact. And then you deal with retention and, people breaking out of the contract or whatever it means.
Yeah. I think of the games that you see advertised on social media where it shows like this really cool gameplay, and then you actually, you download the actual app, the actual game, and you're like, this sucks. Like this is nothing like the ad that I watched for this game,
So you have to deliver on your promise in your marketing. I mean, it's pretty simple to think about, but then when you get into practicality, it's a lot more difficult to actually put that into action. And how do you carry that over to where you still have the same level of excitement, the same level of enthusiasm after they sign the dotted line?
I mean, is it overkill to look at creating a message for everything all the way? I mean, like, is it overkill to kind of make a script or a defined message for everything from website to the initial phone call to this email to this email? Is that overkill?
Absolutely not. Yeah. I mean, we look at, building a home, right? You have a whole set of SOPs that you have to go through, and there's certain things that you need to meet. Same thing happens with marketing. You have to follow a certain step of services and communications and that type of thing, so that you can deliver a consistent message. And so what we've done even internally for our business is create every single email template that we can do. So whether it's reconnecting for a virtual coffee, whether that's delivering a piece of copy to our clients or creating different other assets to help them systemize or communicate the strategy that we're putting out, whatever that is, we're having the same and similar messages going forward to where it seems like there's a level of continuity going through and there's consistency. And when you have consistency, you have loyalty. Again, you reduce buyer remorse, you get them excited, that type of thing.
If you found value in this episode of Your Project Shepherd podcast, please consider leaving us a review and sharing it with your friends. That helps us expand our reach and bring this content to more people. Thanks for being here. I love that because there's so many different ways that in my business and most construction companies that there's so many different ways and avenues that we communicate with people, and there's so many different touch points. I mean, we're on projects that it could be a bathroom remodel or a kitchen remodel that might be 6 or 8 weeks, but it could also be something that's going to go on for 18 or 24 months.
That's a long
time. So you think about how many touch points and how many communication points there are through that. And I think it's really easy to just kind of let that drop off or just say, hey, all this initial marketing stuff is really important. We got to get them on the hook, get them in the door. And then once they're on the hook and in the door, it's like just reverting to just quick text messages or emails that really don't have the same kind of feel, and they don't inspire confidence in the customer either.
Well, and when you do that haphazard type marketing or communication, you lose that trust. You create some sort of feeling of, okay, these people don't know what they're doing. They aren't professional. They're missing steps. Okay, are they missing steps on my home build or my remodel or whatever that is? Are they actually getting everything in that they need to? And so it's a similar thing. It has to match. Your message has to match what you're doing with your end product.
Mm-hmm. I think people say, I've got a great website already. Maybe I have some great templates for a couple of things. And those things might be good individually. Like, I think most people take the approach of, I'm gonna focus on making this website, and then I'm gonna focus on making this, but it's not necessarily thinking how those things are related and how they kind of remain cohesive and how they work together. But I think if we have all those components that are cohesive, it's almost like we're creating a sales funnel, right? Using those components, and not just sales, but it's, if you think of the entire process as a funnel, right? uh, you're using that material to kind of move people all the way from initial phone call or initial awareness on the internet all the way to the end of the project, kind of with the same messaging. And it works so much better than just being choppy.
Yeah. And most companies, and it doesn't matter what industry, but most companies stop after they convert the client and they forget that you have to create some sort of level of excitement. You have to send them to other offers, or at least, upsells, cross sells, down sells. I'm sure like as you're going through the process, it's like, okay, do you want to splurge on this, really expensive countertop, or do we want to talk about, the other countertop that we originally quoted and that type of thing? And then, you get them over to leaving reviews and then getting them to a point where they feel confident enough to actually advocate for you and be like, okay, Curtis isn't paying me, but go ahead and, hire Crafted. And so we forget about that second half of the journey and completing that. And then once you get that end journey, that's where new people get to the beginning, where they start becoming aware that you even exist in the first place.
It's a big circle.
It's a big circle. Yeah. It's a journey. It keeps going round and round. But if we cut it off, then there's no circle. You have to do more work. You have to put more money into your marketing budget to feed that cycle versus creating a fully complete cycle that feeds itself.
Customer acquisition, new customer acquisition from scratch is expensive.
Yeah.
Referrals are not necessarily free, but they're close to free if they're kind of part of that process.
Yeah. They're a huge ROI on that side of things. So whatever you're going to invest in that. So think about as you're looking at building your word of mouth or referral network, completing that full journey to reduce that. And so once you get that funnel completed, then it becomes a lot easier for you to continue growing your business, and you can focus on the end product versus marketing and sales, which for most people, that isn't their strength.
So maybe you can kind of consider shifting some of your marketing dollars to more like process defining dollars and messaging dollars within your existing process.
Yeah.
Which it becomes marketing dollars in a sense, right? Because you're using the customer journey to ensure customer satisfaction, which in turn generates referrals. So you're kind of like maybe shifting some of your marketing dollars from pure customer acquisition to how do we, fine tune the machine to do this for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've even found, as we're deploying this, that as soon as you get people excited, they almost start referring other people over to you, and they haven't even gotten the end product yet. So in that 18, 24-month cycle, they could refer somebody in month 2 just because they're like, this experience is so good. Hey, I have a friend that's wanting to do the similar thing, and they want to track with me, and then they pass that referral over, and all of a sudden you've built more clients just by taking that one extra step at the beginning.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've had that happen a lot where we haven't even started the project yet. We're still kind of in design, pre-construction, and I get this call like, hey, my friend said that they're working with you and they're so happy with you and we want to do the same thing. And wow,
Yeah,
that was easy.
It's exciting too. And it makes you feel good as a business owner and as a contractor to be like, okay, we are doing something good here and we're building something that's worthwhile.
So I like the concept of using stories and telling a story, which is why we did kind of the first season of the podcast the way we did it. But even in marketing for our companies, like we like the use of stories, and I like the Donald Miller story brand framework, right? What kinds of stories should companies be telling on their website through their marketing? Like how can you use stories to draw people in?
Yeah, I think the best story starts with a challenger pain point. So what are they experiencing? What are their challenges? What's the big mountain ahead of them that they're so scared of traversing over? And then going into the end where it's like, okay, you have this big problem, but this is how the hero comes in. So ideally you as the business owner is going to be the hero in the story and kind of coming in and saving them from whatever problem they are. And so you can use stories through a lot of different things. And that sometimes is the best way to even explain and illustrate their pain points, because they may know that, okay, there's something blocking me, but I can't necessarily define it. And so by using stories, you can help them actually define, okay, yeah, I am experiencing that thing. Or, there's an uncertainty about, what's the first step or the financial component, or, what type of design I want, whatever that is. And so if you can talk about that and then share how it's really simple, like there's a simple solution on the back end, that's going to ease that process to where you can actually start a conversation. And then once you get a human to human interaction, that's where the magic can begin. So, we have all this AI kind of taking over the marketing world right now, but the face-to-face component, the human component is still extremely powerful, and it's not.
Well, you can get the fake. You can get the fake AI face, the fake AI face instead.
Yeah. Oh, there's been influencers that have been caught and have grown, multi-million-dollar or million follower accounts, and they're completely fake. And so it's really amazing, that can happen, but we can still pull in the human element.
Yeah. On the story brand, you can make the customer. Like we can be the hero. We can also structure that story
to where the customer
so that so the customer is the hero, and we are the guide in the story. So I like to explain it like you think about Star Wars, or Lord of the Rings, right? There's always, you've got Luke Skywalker's the hero, Yoda's the guide, Darth Vader and the Empire is the problem that's being overcome. Lord of the Rings. Frodo's the hero, Gandalf is the guide. The same thing. It's like, the problem is, it's not an evil entity, but the problem is, hey, we've got this issue that's causing us to need to build a new house, remodel our house, add on a room. We are the guide to help guide you to make the right decisions to make that happen. And you're the hero for choosing that for your family.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So I love that kind of that framework by like positioning us as the guide, which again, going back to the podcast here. That's the whole reason I named it Your Project Shepherd. I had the shepherd's crooks on the logo and all that stuff is we want to be the guide. Right. And so I just love that concept of, you're the one that's doing this. We're just the one who's facilitating, make it happen. We're guiding you through the process.
Yeah, and kind of taking you through that entry door.
Yeah,
and taking that first step.
So I think all of us have consumed so much content at this point in our lives. We've been marketed to since we were born. And so I think everybody gets a little skeptical and jaded just because they get hit all day long, every day, right? So I know when I'm looking at a website of a company that I'm thinking about doing business with, I kind of always take it with a grain of salt, and I don't believe everything I see on the internet. Yeah. Unlike my parents who do believe everything.
Yeah.
Just kidding, Dad. I know you're watching. But how do you take somebody like me or you who kind of, we're just skeptics when it comes to the marketing that we receive and the content that we consume? How do we take a skeptical person and turn them into, if not a non-skeptic or a confident lead, how do you at least turn them into a curious one kind of before they ever contact you or call? How can you use your messaging to kind of take them from skeptic to at minimum curious?
Yeah. I think there's two different ways that you can do. You can do what we've already talked about and really harping on the problem or the challenge or the pain point. But there's another part of that where you can take it a little more positive and talk about the potential transformation. So what does your life look like with that remodeled bathroom? Or what is it like? What does your family look like with a complete custom home that's crafted to your family and what you want and your biggest desires for your family? And so when you get into that more positive loop, it honestly inspires a little more action, because you're like, okay, yes, I do want that. You can weave in the pain points in there of, okay, what are some of those roadblocks that are that you're stumbling on to even get to that transformation? But then talking about that to where it's inspiring that action, and then putting some sort of low risk ask behind it. So obviously somebody isn't going to go on your website and like, yeah, we're going to invest, who knows how much in a complete custom build, 6,000 square foot house. Like that's way too much risk for the first ask.
Someone's not going to click buy.
No, absolutely not. So, but what they can do is schedule a call with you and sit down and talk about, okay, what are your dreams and all of that? What's your vision for that, 6,000 square foot house? And so looking at what is that low risk buy that you can get them to pull in and to have that conversation. And then you can start to address some of those other challenges that they're internally having in their head.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a $19.99 Amazon item that they're purchasing here where they can just come impulsively okay, I'll do that. So yeah, it's more of it's a very personal thing too, when they're inviting somebody into their home to talk about, something that's maybe one of the most important things to them. Right?
Exactly. And you're going to have two different types of people. You're going to have the people that are wanting to plan everything, and it's a very intentional, okay, like we're going to add on, or we're going to renovate, or we're going to do a custom build, or it can be an emergency thing of like, okay, we've wanted to do this, but now like our shower is leaking. Speaking from personal experience, and it was like, okay, we're going to do this in the next 2 years, and now we're having to do it now and rip out our entire shower because the shower pan wasn't put in correctly, which is great. Yeah. But, so some of those things that you need to think about, is it more of an emergent case, or is it a dream case that you need to look at?
Yeah, there's the not fun remodels like that. Then there's the fun remodels where you get to take time and dream and come up with what you want, right? Not the forced remodels are always the painful ones.
Yeah. But, you look for those referrals and those people that you can trust. And so all the people that we brought in to help at that point, and this was several years ago, we all came through word of mouth and referrals. And so that's when you get into, okay, what are you doing in your marketing to make it easy for you to be identified in those word of mouth or those needs? And are you serving the audience that you want to target?
Yeah. And once you get that customer who is maybe kind of being forced to make a buying decision that they really don't want to make, how can you take them at that point and kind of elevate that experience to where they're like, oh, this is really going to suck, to, oh, this has actually been a good experience. And although it was painful in the beginning, now I'm super happy that I've got my, not only a working bathroom, but it's a much nicer bathroom now.
Yeah. Way nicer.
Yeah. So it's also elevating the experience through what your process is, which is kind of the next thing that I wanted to touch on. Was a lot of builders can make a nice product. There's here in a big city like Houston, there's so many home builders, remodelers, contractors, a lot of choices, and there's plenty of good people. And so, I always say that we're not trying necessarily to compete against other people's product, because there's a lot of people who are capable of making a good product. I like to say that we are really selling our process and our process and our knowledge, right? So how can you use copywriting, messaging, marketing to build confidence in what your process is and not just your work?
Yeah. I think part of it starts with, do you actually have a process? Have you defined what that process is? And then can you boil that into very simple terms? And then once you've defined that, then putting that in of, okay, this is as easy as 1, 2, 3, and make it as simple as that. 3 is one of those numbers that makes it really easy for humans just to conceptualize. And okay, like this is easy. This isn't some
3-step process. 3 strikes you're out. 3,
Exactly. If you make it any more than that, then it's too complicated for the buyer to look at. Okay, like I am in step 2, but like I still have 3 more steps. Whereas if they're at step 2, they're over halfway there. And so really trying to figure out how do you boil that down in it. But I think it starts back with, have you defined your processes? And so the way that we approach copywriting is actually a little more operational, because we want you to have that operational basis so that we can actually market it. Because the last thing I want to do is market a company or business or a product that isn't really there or doesn't really prove. Like I don't want to oversell something that doesn't actually exist. And so we work with a lot of our clients of like, okay, what is that process so that what you're delivering is what we're promising.
And if you don't have that process,
let's build it.
Let's sit down and kind of workshop and figure it out and define it first.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. And since, internally at FocusCopy, since we've defined that process, it's made it so much easier for our clients to understand, okay, we're here. This is like, I only have to, have 2 meetings with them and then I get my copy. That's so easy for me to do versus, we could draw it out and there's, I think 13 step processes on our internal end.
Yeah.
But they only see 3.
Yeah. I was talking to you about that before we started filming, actually. In fact, maybe Francis will take some of the outtakes and pop some of those in there, some of the short videos or something like that. But, I was telling you that we actually yesterday, because we added a new team member on the sales side recently, I felt like we needed to kind of not revamp, but kind of redefine and assign roles to the process and just be a little more clear about what the processes are. So actually yesterday and then last week, we had a couple kind of workshop days where we sat down and rolled out a big old sheet of paper on the conference table and just started kind of mapping out the whole customer journey. And we're like, hey, here's all the internal steps that we have to take. But then out of those, what are the big, blinking light customer facing steps that we need to show people, right? And then I said, how can we take that process and condense it a little bit? How can we cut out some unnecessary steps, or at least on the client facing side, cut out unnecessary steps so that they don't feel like they're kind of getting lost in the journey?
Yeah. And then as you're evaluating that, you can also look at what are some of those red bow moments. We actually worked with, and this was a couple of years back, a commercial concrete subcontractor. And towards the end of the project, he's like, can we just have a meeting to wrap a red bow on it? And so we now call that our closeout meeting. And so after every single project that we do and every single quarter, if it's a retainer or a monthly client, we meet with them and have kind of this red bow of, okay, what did we accomplish? Did we meet all the expectations? If we didn't, let's figure out what that is. And then we gather feedback to where we're able to immediately apply that into our process. And I'm telling you, for the moment we deployed that whole process with that one client to now, our processes are 1,000,000 times better. And it's because we're able to be a lot more responsive and, okay, we have this, piece of feedback. What could we be doing better on, or what was, some things that felt janky in their process or whatever that is, and then immediately apply that to where the next client has a completely different experience, to where it's a lot more enhanced and it feels a lot more boutique and that type of thing. And so the same thing can be applied as, are you gathering feedback from your clients? Because sometimes that's the most important and insightful content that you can use into your marketing.
And we don't want to act like we know it all either, or like we're perfect.
No.
I think people appreciate the fact that you are willing to grow and change, and that the feedback that they give you is helpful and important, right? I like to be real with people and make them understand that we're not perfect. We made mistakes. Yeah, we may have made mistakes just like everybody else, but that we learn from those mistakes and we grow as a company and we improve our processes because of those mistakes. So, do you think? I mean, obviously, I think you do, but I'll ask the question: do you think it's a good strategy to kind of be real with the clients about, hey, here's maybe some places that we've stumbled in the past. Here's how we've adapted based on that. Here's how we've grown, and here's what we've done to make sure that those types of things don't happen, right?
Yeah.
Is that good messaging to build trust?
I think it is, because it shows you, especially in starting a new client relationship, it shows, okay, you've taken, several steps to improve your overall process and improve the experience. And so they're like, okay, they're going to take care of me. And if something's wrong, I can actually go to Curtis and he will hear me and listen and fix the problem and find a solution that will work for me and other clients. And so when you talk about those types of things, it creates that trust, it creates that loyalty to where it's a conversation versus they're just going to complain into the ethers and they're never going to hear anything back. And nobody likes feeling like that. You want to feel heard. And especially with what you were saying earlier, the amount of content that we're consuming on a daily basis, It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so as you're going into that, you're often not heard by, a subset of your followers, if that. And so when you're actually heard, it makes you feel good. And so kind of pulling into that emotional and that human element of, okay, what does it take to make a human feel good and feel heard and feel excited and that type of thing?
I actually think kind of a sidebar on that.
Yeah.
I think that, or kind of going back to the amount of content people are bombarded with, I think that, we thought, again, you're too young for this. You guys are too young for this. I heard this as a kid in the 70s, 1970s, 1980s, the 20th century. I heard that, we're bombarded all the time with all this messaging and all this advertising, and it's hard to cut through the messaging. That was nothing compared to today. Like I think back to that time, like how much time I had away from messaging and advertising and content. Like, yeah, I'd drive past a billboard, I'd see something on TV, I'd see an ad in a magazine, but that's nothing like today, where every single thing that you see all day long is some sort of marketing from some source, right?
Yeah.
It's really overwhelming.
I saw a stat, and this was in 2020, so COVID era when it was a little crazy, but it was more content was produced in 2020 than all of history combined.
Yeah, I believe that.
And that was 5 years ago at this point. And so I wonder how many pieces of content is being produced on a daily basis. And then you add AI.
I was going to say, now that AI is making content.
Yeah, AI is using making content all the time, or recreating content, because that's what they're really doing, is they're regurgitating from different learning models and that type of thing. But yeah, it's incredible, the amount of content. So that begs the question of, how are you differentiating yourself?
Yeah.
And how are you standing out? How are you being more unique in your space? There's enough competition and there's enough business to go around. So you don't need to necessarily compete against the next home builder or the next contractor or whatever that is. You need to do what you do really, really well, and you're going to attract the clients that you want to do. And so obviously you got to think about, okay, how is your competition standing and how are you going to differentiate, but really being unique to yourself and figuring out, okay, who's going to be attracted to that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so shifting gears back on our discussion, that popped into my head as you were talking. I had to mention it. So we've been talking mostly kind of about early, pre-contact, initial contact, early communication with customers or potential customers. So I wanted to talk about, like, once we get somebody in the door. Now, the way our company does things, and the way I think a lot of builders now are operating, is we kind of have two sales that we have to make. So we have a defined, like, pre-construction design. Some people call it project development process. But again, we're kind of making two sales. We're making one sale to kind of just get them in the door to engage with us for our pre-construction project development. And then after we do that, we have to do another sale to get them into the construction side of things, right? And so it's really important that we kind of continue that communication and kind of hold their hand through that journey to keep them engaged, keep them on the hook, so they don't fall off before they get to the second sale, the real sale. Yeah. So, bad communication or miscommunication or lack of communication can kill the deal. It can stall the progress of that process, or it can just make them lose confidence, right? So we obviously got them to have enough confidence in us to hire us in the first place, but how do we kind of maintain that confidence all the way through, whether it's 4 or 6 weeks, a few months worth of planning before they get to a job? How do we kind of keep them engaged and keep them from getting weary?
Yeah. I mean, especially with the life cycle that you're working with, it's a much longer project than, saying buying a widget or going into a store and buying a product, that type of thing. And so the big thing is really looking at, how are you going to communicate that they're making a good decision, that they're a smart person, that they're doing an intelligent thing, that, oh, this is our process, this is what we're working on, this is how we're crafting, something really incredible for them. And so there's the two things of, like, boosting confidence, but it's also showing, okay, this is the process, this is where we're in, in. This is the next step. Okay, do we need to have another touch point? That type of thing. And so creating that next level of commitment. So are there micro commitments that you can make between them signing the pre-construction to actually signing the dotted line for actually building out?
Or how can you celebrate or make those touch points memorable to get them re-excited?
Yeah, and it can be more than just an email or a phone call or text message or whatever. Like, feel free to activate them through whether it's sending them a gift or inviting them to an event or whatever that is, trying to get them engaged on a different level that builds that connectiveness. So, for you have this massive opportunity with the podcast, and say you work with a client that, could actually fits into the podcast realm. Yeah. Be like, okay, I want to you've already gone through this pre-construction. Let's go ahead and invite you onto the podcast and talk. And now they feel like they owe it to you because they've gotten this platform. And obviously you don't want to, lead in it from a manipulative manner. Yeah. But just, hey, I want to be invested in you. This is more than just a client-vendor relationship. This is an actual relationship that we're building. And so we have to like each other for a long time. 18 months, 24 months, that's a lot of stress. That's a lot of contact that you have. So how can you create those relational ties as early on as possible?
Yeah. Going back to kind of charting out the customer journey that we're talking about, one of the next things I want to do is say, okay, in this winding road that they have to take to even get started, what are the low points in there that we can elevate? And then what are the high points that we can celebrate? Yeah. So, whether it's, like you said, a gift, a meal, but even if it's something cheesy, just something to make it memorable and to keep them engaged.
Humor is a great thing.
but I do think it's important to find ways to elevate the low points, because in any long transaction like that, there's going to be times where people start to feel tired, weary, frustrated, whatever it is. But it's like, how can you identify those? I would say most of the time those occur at kind of similar points, regardless of the customer. So how do you identify those points and find ways to boost that?
Yeah. And I think if you analyze it, you'll find that there are certain low points and that you can anticipate that. And so sending out a message of okay, most clients hit this type of feeling or, experience this type of situation at this point. We totally get it. Here's how to get out of it. Or here's how to change your mindset. Or can we send them something funny that makes it lighthearted of just this period of the project just sucks. We're not going to be, trying to make light of it. But what we are going to do is just address it and acknowledge that it exists. And then we're going to move on. Yeah. And so sometimes making them feel seen and heard can do a lot with the relationship.
Absolutely. During both, kind of this pre-construction planning, but also during construction, there's a lot of technical information that gets passed back and forth. And I think as people in the industry, we're probably not even aware that some of the things that come out of our mouth are technical or maybe above people's heads, right? So kind of also in the interest of keeping people excited, engaged, but also making sure they understand what are some ways that we can communicate technical information better with a layperson, a non-construction person?
I think, part of it is you need to have that technical information in there. That way you actually know what you're talking about from the contractor side of things. You need to know, okay, we've communicated this specific piece, but then explaining it in layman's terms and okay, what this means is, we've made this really simple process and, we're working on this, we're finding a fix. You don't need to know about all of these other details. Yeah.
But if you want to know how the sausage is made,
we have it here because there are going to be people that are just interested in that. But
they're called engineers.
Yeah. But providing a quick explanation of okay, what this is the important thing that I want you to pay attention to, or this is what this means. You don't really need to pay attention to. We just want to be communicating. And so really differentiating your message of okay, this is what you need to pay attention to. This is the nice to knows, and this is kind of information that we need to send you, but you don't even have to read it. We're just communicating it over.
Yeah, I like that. So during construction, we talked about the technical information that kind of bleeds over from pre-construction during construction. There's just a lot of technical information. Also in the middle of the construction project, and again, these things might take a long time. How do we keep people? What are some ways that we can kind of remind them of where they are? And we touched on this a second ago, but that was more kind of pre-construction, kind of a short journey. When you're on a long journey, when you're on that 6, 12, 18, 24-month journey, how do you what are some strategies to remind people of where they are in the process and kind of help them keep their eye on the prize?
I think I've said this before, you got to define the process. And so is it an 18-step process? Okay. Obviously, we talked about the rule of 3 on the front end, but sometimes processes are going to be way longer than that. So say it's an 18-24-step process. You have a different process for each month, talking, okay, this is where we are in the overall process. Hey, guess what? We skipped this because we made this certain decision or whatever. And so just communicating where you are in the overall process, but then also communicating, okay, there is no action that you need to take here, or yes, there is an action that you need to take. So really mitigating it and becoming more informative, but then also being very specific and, okay, if you do need a response from them, what is that response? And making sure that it's very clear. That way they feel like it's easy to actually engage with you and you're being over informative versus like a ghost, and you're gonna take their money and they're never gonna see the house for it.
So kind of like during the highlighting the steps we talked about during the high and low points during the pre-construction process, same thing during construction. There's also plenty of even more high and low points during a construction project. And so, we like to find ways to celebrate the big moments and to elevate the low moments, but also just getting into like a regular meeting rhythm is very important. So, we like to say, hey, we're going to have a weekly meeting on the calendar, whether we need it or not. We can always cancel it, but that pick a time, Thursday at 8 a.m., we're going to meet here. We're going to talk about issues, and we're going to just make sure that you feel like you understand where we're at, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that having a good meeting rhythm is really important. But one of the things that, and I'm taking a long way to get to kind of the messaging thing here, but when we have those on-site meetings, I think it's really easy to just say, okay, we met on site, see you next week. It's really important to have good documentation and written communication around even the in-person meetings.
Yeah.
So we tell our project managers, like, you need to take some notes, and at the end of that meeting, put it in writing. So we use a project management software where we can document meeting notes.
Yep.
But even if a company isn't using that, at least put it in an email, summarize it, and send it.
Yeah.
And maybe this is, where good copywriting can help you kind of create a template for that.
Exactly.
And not only to document, but also to a template, say, these are meeting notes for this phase. The next phase is blank. So not only are we documenting, but we're also reminding them again what the next step is.
Yeah. I mean, after every single meeting that we have with clients, we send a recap email of, okay, this is what we discussed. Here's our action items. Here's your action items. This is when you can expect a response by, or, whatever. We set actual deadlines and we put them in bold. That way everybody is knowledgeable. But then in addition to that, and it sounds like even with those weekly check-ins, we do something similar, and we just send them a Monday email of, okay, this is what we're expecting from you. So we need you to revise XYZ. Here's on the docket for this week. And this is what you can expect to receive from us by the end of the week or by whatever date that is. And oh, by the way, here's a question for you, or that type of thing. And so having that regular cadence makes it so much easier versus, starting engagement and then, 6 weeks later, you then talk to them and they're like, okay, what am I paying them to do? Why am I do I actually trust them? Okay, we need to cover, 6 weeks worth of ground, that type of thing. And so if you have that regular cadence, you can skip a whole lot of issues because you can attack them head on. And so then that creates a better operation, that creates higher profits for your business. I mean, there's so many different ways and benefits that you can have if you start with good communication.
And just it gives, so that kind of post-meeting follow-up also provides an opportunity to clear any confusion.
Yes.
Because sometimes people might remember the same situation different ways. So the project manager or whoever's meeting the customer on site says, this is what we talked about, this is what we agreed on. It gives them the opportunity to say, you know what, that's not what I remember. Let's go ahead and address that now. Or, and even just kind of protection. So like 6 months down the road, if something's done a certain way, because that's what we talked about, the customer says, I didn't want that.
Yeah. And you have evidence.
Well, yeah. I mean, we had this meeting, 6 months ago. Here's where you said, I want this.
Yeah.
You never responded and said otherwise. So that's the direction that we went on this. Yeah. So it's documentation, it's backup, which, I'm a firm believer in, always having some backup. You always hate to think about the legal side of things, but if something should ever go that direction, at least you have the documentation to say, it's right here on June 26th, we met and had this conversation right here, Yeah.
Communication does a lot for you.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I realized getting deeper into copywriting is it can help so many different areas of your business. And so it isn't just marketing and sales, it's operational, it's legal, it's financial, there's so many different aspects of it. And so really figuring out, okay, what is a process? What do we need to do? What's the end goal? Who are we talking to? And then figuring out how to communicate the best and what platforms are going to be the best. So like certain audiences aren't going to want to do email. If you're in, the field all the time, you may not, like text may be easier. Well, let's have a process for text messaging. And are there apps to where you can pull up templates and that type of thing to where it's really easy? You don't have to necessarily think about your message every single time you send a message. You have a format to go. And so that's when it gets back into communication documentation. And so same thing as you would document all your processes for your business, you need to document for your marketing and sales.
Yeah. Yeah. That actually makes me think we signed up a client yesterday who is probably 80 years old, and she's not going to use email, and she's not going to use our project management software. But she also is going to require a high level of touch and communication just because of her personality. And so I was talking to the team about, okay, how are we going to handle this person to make sure that she feels good about where we are, and how are we going to keep her informed if she's not going to engage with us in our typical process.
Yeah.
So, automation in communication. Are there any systems that we can use to save time, like things like triggers being set up to automatically send things, distribute certain pieces of content, things like that?
I mean, there's a million softwares out there, but I always recommend everybody, every single business owner having a CRM that can plug into some sort of email service provider. And so I like having those two things combined together because it makes it so much easier for you to communicate. And so out of that, you can create a lot of templates. One of the softwares that we personally use and that we're actually migrating to right now, they call it snippets. So I'm able to pull up all my snippets where I can edit a couple things, send out an email really quickly. And so all of a sudden an email that would have previously taken 20 minutes now takes maybe 2, and that's already been developed. And you don't even have to go to ChatGPT to develop it, again and again. You've already done it. And so figuring out what are those softwares that you can identify, and I'm sure there's a million that are construction focused that are going to be looking at the project management side of things and figuring out, okay, how are we going to communicate what touch points, but definitely getting a CRM and an email service provider, that makes it so much easier. That way you can put them on a campaign, have those automations of like, okay, if we know that this is a standard, we only do bathroom remodels. It's a standard 6-week process. Week 1, week 2, week 3, so on, you send a specific email for that week. And so if you know those cadences, now if you don't, then you may have to do more of a manual side of things, but develop those templates ahead of time. That way it becomes so much easier for you to get those out and have those reminders to actually send them out versus waiting for it to just happen and thinking, there's a million things as business owners that we have to do. So try to take as much off your plate as possible.
Yeah. Or even for a salesperson who's doing it, if they're managing 20 different leads all at various stages, it can get overwhelming trying to remember what's the next email to send, what have I already told this person, and just taking the time to draft something from scratch versus click, plug in a couple of bits of information and you're done.
Yeah. And that way, whatever you're doing sales-wise is connected to your marketing. Because the biggest mistakes I see with companies is when they separate their marketing and sales departments and act as two separate entities where they really need to be connected. Because if marketing isn't attracting the right leads, then sales isn't able to close those leads, and then sales gets mad at marketing, and then they conflict, and it's a big old fight, and then the business is suffering. So we want to make sure that those two pieces are connected on the front end, and then you can work on the back end.
So I wanted to talk about kind of after the sale, and we mentioned this at the beginning, how this can be a very beneficial circle of life, Lion King moment.
Yeah.
It's so end of the project. It's been a long journey. It's been many months. I think it's really easy to say, especially if there's been some stressors, it's really easy for the team to say, we're done. I don't have to talk to these people anymore. But how can we use our kind of post-project period to continue that messaging and to get those referrals and to complete that circle?
Yeah, I love doing a wrap-up call first, gathering that feedback like we do with our closeout meetings. I think that's a great opportunity to have that face-to-face, sending out a reminder, okay, this is what you said in our meeting. We typed up your exact words into a nice little review. Go ahead and copy and put it onto Google. And so now you're building a review side of things, and you're making it really easy because you've actually written the review for them based on their words. Obviously, you don't want to write a review that they haven't said.
Right.
Use their words. We don't want to be unethical here.
Here's a template. Feel free to tweak it a little bit.
Yeah. Make it easy for them to leave a review.
Here's the link to click.
Yeah. And then you can even have a couple, like a series after that of, okay, say you did that bathroom remodel. Here are a couple of general maintenance things that you need to think about. And so now you're adding value and you're creating this sense of like, okay, they're still taking care of me.
Maybe even use that CRM to create a trigger 6 months down the road. Yeah. Hey, it's time to recaulk that wall or that shower or whatever, or it's time to flush your water heater after 6 months.
Yeah. And you can have a cadence based on that to where it makes it really easy, and it could be your home maintenance checklist or whatever series. And then at the end of that, hey, know anybody that needs XYZ? Go ahead and reach out. Like,
ready for your next phase?
Yeah, ready for your next phase. Hey, we'll even send you $1,000 bonus or referral fee, like for anything. Like, I mean, you could do so much with that just to entice and really get them in and continue the relationship. And so everything, I always say marketing is an experiment. So test out a couple things. That referral fee may not be effective with your audience at all. So drop it. Don't have to worry about it. But it may also be very effective. But I mean, if you're closing 50, 200,000, 300,000, whatever deals on the project management side, less all the material, whatever that is, let's go ahead and throw out that $1,000 fee. Like, that's a drop in the bucket for you.
Send us a referral and we will do design on your next bathroom project for free.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to piece it together. And so really looking at, okay, what are those things that you can get them to continue to think about you? Yeah. And how can you stay in touch? And
then again, for us, we have a warranty that, the warranty for finishes and for workmanship is 12 months. So at the end of the 12-month period, we typically reach back out and say, hey, your warranty is wrapping up. Have you done a walkthrough, or can we come and do a walkthrough and identify anything that should be addressed at this stage?
Do that at 11 months.
11 months, 10.5 months, have a trigger, have an automation in the CRM to where 10.5 months after they move in or they start using the bathroom, hey, we're going to ask you about your warranty. Yeah. And then another year after that, your plumbing and electrical and HVAC warranty are expiring. Let's do another check-in. How are those systems doing? Anything to work on? So it's just a great way to re-engage and keep the relationship going. But again, I'm thinking if people are approaching this from the kind of the whole project life cycle perspective, and they're identifying all these points then they can get somebody like FocusCopy to help them kind of create that messaging.
Yeah.
And again, stay cohesive, make sure that all feels the same, this kind of the same vibe, the same, just the same feel all the way through. So they feel like it's all part of one big process and it's not haphazard.
Yeah. You need to be authentic.
Yeah.
And you need to be one human or one business. I think where a lot of trust is lost is when you act so many different ways in so many different places. And so they feel like, okay, do I actually know this business? Do I actually trust them? That type of thing. It's the same with humans. Yeah. If you act a certain way at church, the way you do in business, the way you do in your marriage or with your kids or, whatever different areas. And if you act like different people, you're going to lose that trust and that relational equity. Yeah. And so by being the same in every single area, you're going to build a lot of that equity with them.
Absolutely. So it's been a great discussion. I hate to wrap it up. So I want to close it out with just a couple more quick kind of summary type questions. What things can separate your communication or my communication, and one business's communication from their competition? Like how can you use communication to set yourself apart?
Yeah. I think going back to who are you, what is your value, and what do you want to accomplish with them? And so really making it a partnership with your client. And then that way it makes you feel like you all are in alignment versus you're the bad guy and trying to take their money. And so really trying to figure out what is that. And then also proving your uniqueness. And so you don't necessarily need to address your competition. Like there is a million copywriters out in the world and a million freelancers and all of that stuff. I don't look at any of them. I'm like, okay, this is what we do. We do a strategy, we do the writing, we do the systems, and that's all we do. So if you want to be strategic with your words, with your messaging, with your communications, then we're going to be the partner that you're going to want to work with because we've set ourselves apart, not even addressing any of our competitions. The same as a home builder, there's, especially in the Houston market, there's a lot of people.
Yeah, hundreds.
And so, but there's going to be people that are going to be on the lower end of professionalism, whereas like you're going to be on the higher end of that professionalism scale. And so you don't necessarily need to worry about the lower end guys. And, they have their place and there's enough business to go around. Sure. Same for you. And so just kind of sitting in that mindset of we're just going to be us and, hardcore us so that we can attract the people that we want to work with versus worrying about everybody else.
So all of this that we talked about might sound overwhelming to some people. If you think about how much communication and messaging kind of has to take place over the course of that customer life cycle, again, it's the marketing, the marketing, the awareness, the customer acquisition, pre-construction, design, construction, warranty. It can be
overwhelming.
It's a lot to bite off if somebody wants to overhaul or just fine tune or even create from scratch if they have nothing, right?
Yeah.
Where should people start? Like, where should builders or just business owners in general, where should they first focus on building trust?
That's a great question. I think even pulling back where to build trust is looking at your entire business, where are your big bottlenecks, and addressing that first, because that's going to be your biggest issue. So if your biggest issue is after you sign them on, they're leaving or trying to breach contract or break a relationship with you, okay, we need to address that part first, because there's no point in attracting new business if once they get past the finish line and they sign a contract with you and you're losing them right off the back. And so figuring out what are the priorities in your business, what are the bottlenecks in your business, tackling that first, and then you can go on to the next priority. And so oftentimes it isn't necessarily the lead generation side. Lead generation is generally easy. It's the conversion, getting them to buy in, getting them really excited, and cross-selling, upselling, downselling them. That's the hard bit. And so that's where I like to focus on, especially if you do have the leads coming in and you're not too concerned about that.
All right, last question. How can Lauren Jefferson and FocusCopy help people do that?
Yeah, all it starts with a conversation. That's it. We'll get a cup of coffee virtually or in person, and we'll just talk about your business and really look at, okay, what are those bottlenecks in your business? What's going on that's stopping you from reaching your goals, whether that's with your clients, whether that's revenue, whether that's whatever other business goal that you're trying to tackle. What are those things that are stopping from? And then from there, we can identify, okay, what do we need to work on first? What is the strategy that we need to put in place? And it all starts with a conversation. So we keep it real simple.
Awesome. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Always great to see you, and look forward to getting you engaged on kind of our stuff as we look to revamp some of this stuff ourselves. So, for people watching, I too go through the same stuff, and I'm working on the same stuff, and I definitely believe in fine tuning this messaging and making sure that our customers feel a part of the journey, a part of the process, and that we give them the clarity so that they understand the process. So thanks again. And thanks to all of you guys for listening or watching the Your Project Shipper podcast. I hope to see you next time. Take care.